work on the side there and doing content for NeoAir. So yeah, it's just getting busier and busier. How about yourself, Mitch? Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, I've been playing a bit of Cold War myself actually, and we were playing Warzone the other night in the stream. That was actually quite fun. Actually, the new mode is actually very fun. With yeah, yeah, I found it was pretty fun, pretty fast paced as well. I'm loving the whole rebirth mechanic as well. I think they should actually make that a permanent thing. Um, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose you got a point there because I mean, since the map is a lot smaller, you're more likely to die a lot quicker as well. Whereas if you're on the normal Warzone map, it's a lot bigger, so less chance of running into somebody, as opposed to the Rebirth Island map. So I guess it kind of makes sense. Yeah, it's pretty much like a big neon sign. It's just pointing like, "Look, I'm here." Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think the best one we got to was third place. I think. Not much you could really do about it, but keeping games going, I guess, is the main thing. And speaking of things, games going, it's a nice little segue there, a little smooth one there. Moving on to the next topic, we thought we'd talk about. Well, I tried my best to make a good segue. Um, Speaking of segues, anyway, we're going to talk about on this episode, episode 4. We're going to talk about games coming to subscription models. What does this mean for games in the future? Like, will this be the death of certain games if they have to rely on like very heavily on a subscription model? Jeez, like took me a while to get that out. Would it be the death of certain games? Like, do you think? if games in the future end up being on platforms such as Microsoft's or Xbox Game Pass or Epic Games or Uplay and stuff like that, do you think it'd be the death of some games if they purely made it subscription only? And like, would that alienate a big like gamer base? Yeah, I was just curious to know what you think of it. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, I can sympathize with that. I could see that happening. Particularly, things like Project xCloud and Google dabbling in Stadia. I could imagine the future would be very much heavily internet relied upon kind of system where people are streaming their games to different platforms. Um, Unfortunately, the way of subscription, because everything else seems to be going subscription these days. Um, I can see that being a common thing. Like, the only thing that I don't think would happen is I don't think Steam would jump on the board, at least not at first. Because I imagine, I don't know, I kind of have got this feeling that Steam is very stuck in the old ways on a lot of things. Like, don't get me wrong, fantastic platform, massive sales and games all the time, that's fantastic. But I kind of feel like lately they don't really listen to the community as much. Um, Look, I mean, everyone's been asking for what Half-Life 3 for like what over a decade. People have been asking for Left 4 Dead 3 for over a decade. Valve's just turning and going, got nothing to show you. I think that's why it was such a big surprise when they announced Half-Life Alex on VR, and everyone was like, "Oh shit, okay, they're finally doing something with the Half-Life franchise." But apart from that, you can kind of see their frustration with a lot of the companies they work with, like the guys that have worked on that Back for Blood game that recently got announced. It's You might as well just say it's Left 4 Dead 3. It's just they can't call it that due to legal reasons, but they're not fooling everyone. Everyone knows it's Left 4 Dead 3. So, but I kind of feel like Steam there would be one of the last people to jump on it, and I also feel as though Sony's the same too. Like Sony seems like they have PlayStation Now, but they've only brought it out to the UK and US, and they've left like half their market unable to use it. And even then, it's only so you can stream like PS3 and PS2 to games. But like I feel like Sony's dropping the ball there, and that's why I'm hoping that they're working on something secretly to try and compete with Game Pass. They can kind of tell they're trying to come up with something, but they just don't know what yet. Uh, yeah, and I think that's the difference is there's going to be a lot of deals and communications with different games companies to try and get them on board with the different companies. And that's why I think it's such a strategic move for Microsoft to, come out with Game Pass and come to game developers and be like, "Here's a bag of money, put it on our Game Pass." So even, but that'd be the interesting too. Like, since Microsoft's bought them out, they're gonna keep the Bethesda launcher, or are they just gonna chuck all the Bethesda games into the Game Pass and just go, you know what? You want to play Wolfenstein 3 or whatever? Here you go, it's in the Game Pass. You want to play Elder Scrolls 6 when that finally comes out? Guess what? It's exclusive to Game Pass. Bam, there it is. I, I found that too actually because finally updated Doom Eternal the other day because I was like, I might actually play it again. And oh my god, the launcher went for ages. And I was like, this is brutal. I'm like, yeah, now I remember why I didn't update it last time. If you think that's brutal, just watch PS4 try and download stuff. That's even worse. It's like, just like, dude. Even in like, even in rest mode, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm ready to play, and the next thing an update pops up, and you're like, no. It's, it's so brutal. Yeah. And then you just watch the bar, and it's barely even ticking. You're like tapping the screen. I'm like, is this even working? Like, I think it's broken. Well, that's why I'm so glad PS5 has Wi-Fi 6 built into it. So now the download speeds are just like, oh, so good. It's like things download like in an instant, so much better. Yeah, and I don't know whether that's an architectural thing or just the way they set up the UI or something. But it's just like, no, I think it was something to do with either the Wi-Fi adapter or the architecture, the way they built the PS4. Because it's like, because I had an Xbox One S, and that thing would download faster than my PS4, and yet it's supposed to. Well, I had a PS4 Pro. There's like a PS4 Pro that's supposed to be top of the line kind of console, and a One S that's supposed to be bottom of the pile Xbox, and it could download quicker than the Pro. So it's like, what? Yeah. Thankfully, we're in a new generation now, but just back then, you're like, yeah. I think a lot of people are waiting for it. Yeah. Well, I'm also thinking that because with Cyberpunk coming out, I know it's a little detour, but Cyberpunk coming out, like one of the minimum requirements is that it needs an SSD, and so you kind of think, well, isn't the original PS4 and PS4 Pro they're just normal hard drives, aren't they? Like I didn't think they were SSD because I'm pretty sure the PS4 and the PS4 is just a normal hard drive, like it's not SSD. Um, I don't think anyone's actually noticed that actually. Because the weird thing is that you play on PS5 and that has an SSD, and I've been playing on PS5 and I haven't had I've had a couple glitches, but it's not like game breaking. It's kind of actually just funny ones where what's his name, Jackie just walks through a bunch of lockers and things go flying everywhere. That's which is pretty funny, but but apart from that, right. Yeah. Yeah, I was right. Okay, so the PS4 has a base hard drive. It's not SSD. So I'm wondering maybe it's to do with the hard drive. That's why it's not loading it quick enough to keep up with the assets popping in. I Another case solved. the Nothing just occurred to me. I was like, wait a minute. Didn't they say it has to be a minimum requirement? It has to be an SSD for Cyberpunk? And I was like, wait, the PS4 doesn't have an SSD. And that's probably why it's like not popping in assets quick enough because it's like it just can't keep up. I'm trying to pop the assets in. Yeah. So I'm just looking at Cyberpunk's system specs, and yeah, they say 70 gigabytes of hard drive, but then in brackets they say SSD recommended, and that's in the minimum system requirements. Sounds like, why'd you just say it's SSD only? So it's like, you might as well just say don't even bother. Yeah. I don't think it does. that's the thing. Like, if you where it's broken, and you've chatted to the developers and they've turned and said, "Yeah, our bad. We're gonna fix it. We'll release updates for it. We'll keep you posted when the updates are out." Wouldn't you be better off just going, "Okay, cool. I'll wait for the updates. In the meantime, I'm gonna go play some unfinished games that I've played, like started playing this year, but never got around to finishing until the updates come out, and then I'll come back and play this game." I could too, but at the same time, like for me, I've got like I don't know, probably about 30 games on my desktop right now that I can see while we're recording this podcast, and I guarantee you at least, actually, probably nearly all of them I haven't actually really finished. It's like I'm still halfway through playing them all through this year. And this year's had some phenomenal games come out. Like from the start of the year, there was Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, and I still haven't finished it. It's still sitting there incomplete. There was Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I haven't finished that yet. That's come out only recently. Doom Eternal came out at the start of the year. Still haven't finished it. So it's like I've got a massive backlog of games to play. Like I'm sure there's something else I could play while I'm waiting for the updates to come out. Even though lately it's all about the Cold War, but anyway, because I'm really enjoying that game. Well, thank you for joining us for the Rant podcast. If you'd like to watch next week's, no, yeah, but to a certain degree, yeah, we're certain degree, of course they do, because media companies they're going to jump on that for clicks. That's what they get paid for. They get every time somebody clicks on a link, they're getting paid for it. Every time you go onto a gaming website and there's an advert that pops up, they're getting paid for it. If they're gonna jump on the hype train because people are salty about launch titles or particular games and stuff like that, they're gonna run with it for as long as they can because they want to milk it for the money and the clicks. That's just that's just the nature of the game. It's on every platform. That's YouTube. That's Twitch. That's pretty much every gaming journalism website. It's all about the clicks. Nice segue. That was smooth. That was real smooth. Yeah. So, if in case you've missed it, Hunter x Hunter uh, isn't quite out yet in Australia. It'll be out on New Year's Day. I think they got it slated for some reason. I don't know why. But it's come out, I think, in the US and China. China got pulled from the market pretty quickly. Um, yeah, Monster Hunter came out in China, got pulled off the market because they made some offensive comment, which I've seen the part that they're talking about, and I didn't think it was like offensive, but then again, I don't understand the context, so that's might be just a cultural difference or something. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but. Yeah, I'm kind of in a place. Yeah, it's a place where we can't really talk about it because we don't understand the context or the history behind it. But apparently, it's really offensive. They got pulled off the Chinese market pretty quickly, and then reviews came out in the US and IGN. The good reviewers they are. Not throwing any shade there, but 7.8 too much water. What? Uh, um, Anyway, decided to give it a 3 and saying it's absolutely horrible. So yeah, that's why I don't know. IGN used to be really respected in my eyes, but like in the last probably I'd say probably one of the last 3 or 4 years for me, it kind of feels like I don't know the review teams or something have just changed so much that it's very hard for them to actually give anything above a 5 or a 6, or if I kind of felt like lately too is like they're very much. I'm gonna try to word this in a way that doesn't piss off a lot of people. They're very heavily into the social justice kind of scene, which not it's not a bad thing in certain areas, but I'm finding it's impacting their reviews a lot more than it should. Um, like for example, I was watching a video from the Quartering. He's a well-known YouTuber. People probably know who he is, but he was talking about how one of their reviewers, Kaylee, who used to work at IGN, was reviewing Cyberpunk for I think it was GameStop. I think it was for, or Game Informer, either one. Um, and she reviewed it really poorly. But then he was pointing out that she was on I think it was like a podcast interview kind of thing, and she was talking about how she only played like halfway through the game. She didn't really go into the RPG elements. She doesn't actually like RPGs. She didn't do any customization. Didn't even mod her weapons or anything like that. She basically played the basics. Didn't do any side quests or nothing. And he was pointing out, yeah, and he was pointing out, and he was like, how is it that they can go give a review, like give a RPG game to a person that doesn't like RPGs, doesn't play most of the game, openly admitted that she didn't play most of the game, and still give it like a rating of 6 out of 10 or whatever, when it's a bit biased because they've openly said I don't really like playing RPGs, but I'm going to do it for the nature of this review. Like at the same token, you can't have somebody that goes in and goes, "I love RPGs, it's great anyway," but you need somebody that's I'm going to give it a go. Exactly. Yeah, I think that was the point he was trying to make. It was like it's a bit hard to get somebody to do a review when they clearly don't like that particular genre. Like for me, I'm not really into these big RPG, fully driven games or RTS games and things like that. I know that. I know that's not a genre I enjoy that much. So it'd be a bit difficult for you to say here review this when I'm already going to go and they're going, "Ugh, I really don't like this genre to begin with, so I don't know why I'm reviewing this, but I'll do it anyway. Is Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the difference between me and you. You're really into those kind of medieval games or RPG elemented games and things like that. Whereas me, I'll play occasional RPG ones, but I'm not really hardcore into them. So it's not like a thing I'd be like going out of my way to play. And saying that though, like if a Pokemon title comes out, I'll be the first to play a Pokemon game or Final Fantasy. I'll get that as well. Games like that, but well, that's kind of like, and I'm not usually into RPGs, but then Mass Effect comes out, and I'm a sucker for Mass Effect, so it's like games like that. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, just backtracking a bit, they were talking to Kaylee from GameStop, and she's the same infamous reviewer that gave Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire 7.8 instead too much water, which is like it's a remake, and the remake like the original game, you gave it like IGN gave it about an 8 or a 9 out of 10. So it's like okay, but yeah, and then the quarter in quarter out on it, and said this is a bit silly of you to do this. Don't go attacking. Like he told his community, don't go attacking her or anything, but you should at least mention to her like this is a bit silly that you've done this. Like, why did you review this game if you clearly don't like RPGs? Why are you reviewing the game? Next, everyone from IGN and all that are all bullying, quartering, trying to pull down his channel and everything like that, telling he's an absolute, f the head and all this and all that kind of stuff. And it's and you just and it's just like he didn't do anything. All he did was call out this reviewer. He didn't call her any names. He didn't say anything bad about her as a person. He just merely said, like, he even told his community, don't attack her in any way or anything like that. I don't condone that kind of action. But just so people are aware, it's a bit. I think it's a bit unfair that she got to review this game in a negative light, or because she doesn't enjoy the RPGs in general, doesn't enjoy the genre at all. And the next they're all attacking him on Twitter and everything like that. And it's like, where's the credibility gone from IGN? Like, they used to be one of the top gaming websites you'd go to every time for guides, walkthroughs, and reviews and that. And it just seems like lately they just seem to be all about the social justice, controversies, and all that, and just attacking people with no research done whatsoever. It's like, yep. Yeah, absolutely. And this, I think that's the big problem for a lot of reviews and stuff like that. And, I feel as though reviews give me a good judgment of things when they're granted, but at the same time, I also think they're a little bit, not to say biased, because all reviews are basically biased anyway. It's all personal opinion, but uh, uh, but open-minded a bit, and then taking all the elements of that particular thing and looking at the good and the bad between certain parts. Like, you can't just pull the movie apart entirely and not look at it, all the elements of that particular game or movie and things like that. It'd be like, the thing is, you can't send a person in that like a film critic. You can't send a film critic that loves fantasy movies but hates comedies or dramas, and then you get them to review a comedy or drama. It's like, they're already going to hate it from the moment they got given that assignment. So, yeah, exactly. It's like they're already going to hate you already because they're like, I don't like that genre to begin with. I've never liked that genre. And then from the moment they sit down to watch that movie or play that game, they're going to be like, this is shit. And it's like, yeah, but you've only seen it for 10 minutes. It's like, you haven't actually done a proper research on this particular thing. Absolutely, and I kind of feel like I think that kind of is where we do things a little bit differently. Is where we we try and keep to being a little bit more open minded with our reviews and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I think it needs to be done in a way where you're looking at everything agnostically, where you're looking at things like the gameplay elements. Like, for we did a review on Ghost of Tsushima, and I talked about there was combat elements that were really cool. Counter attacks are really cool. Made you have similar feelings to like Assassin's Creed, but got the best parts out of it. And then the story the story was really interesting. It keeps you intrigued throughout the whole thing. It should be things like that, pulling apart the different elements, not just talking about, I didn't like the game because I went for 40 hours and I didn't do half the game. Alright, done. It's like, it's like, yeah, I remember I actually commented on one of those gaming community pages, and he's like, guy commented on, he's like, "Oh, I finished the game already." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "Yeah, it took me about 20 hours." I was like, "Dude, you rushed through the story. You didn't do any side quests, and you do realize that." Yeah, and then I said to him also, I was like, "Yeah, but there's also three different paths as well. Like, you've done one path out of three that also have five different endings per path. So you've done like you haven't really finished the game. You've just finished one story out of the various different endings." Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think that's the thing is like if you really wanted to play the game, you'd want to try and make it last as long as you possibly could. I mean, there's a fair few games out there where I've really enjoyed it, so I'm willing to go find all the collectibles and do everything. Then there's some games where I'm just like, I just want to. I'm over the side quest. I just want to finish the game. Perfect example: Final Fantasy 15. I played the game, looks amazing. Started doing side quests because I was like, yeah, it's pretty fun. And then it ended up getting just tedious and boring, and I was just like, about a quarter of the way through, I was like, I'm just gonna go through the story now. I just can't care. I couldn't care less about the side story now. I'm just gonna go through the game. Yeah, I kind of felt the same too when I was playing Ghost of Tsushima. Was a perfect example of that. I loved the game so much, I really didn't want it to end, and then I actually got to the point where I was like, I really wish it would end soon. And then I ended up finding out that was the first part of three for the game, and I'm like, oh, okay, this game is a lot bigger than I thought it was. It's like, wow. But I ended up doing 100% of that as well because I just really loved the game and I got really into it. But and speaking, yeah, I'm a bit the same too. Actually, like if it can't hook me within the first 10 hours of the game, then that's it. Like I'm done with it. It's like it's got to be give me enough reason to finish it. Same with TV shows now. I'm at the point now because there's so many TV shows these days. Like if it doesn't hook me in the first 3 episodes, I'm not watching the rest of it. That's pretty much how it is. And there's nothing worse when you get into start a new TV show and then you realize you've hit the season finale and the finale's on hiatus for such a long time. You're like, damn it. You're just like, damn it, I've caught up. I Discovery, yeah. You're stuck on mid-season finale. I had the same thing too, and I looked it up a few days ago, and I'm like, "What? That was the mid-season finale? What? I didn't even say that." I was like, "No, not right now." Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that's a whole different podcast. We could make a podcast out of that, to be honest. But we we definitely could. I'm really hoping they keep Dave Filoni and John Favreau on for most of the projects because anything they seem to have touched lately has been gold. It's like I, I think it's because Dave Filoni he got taught by George Lucas the lore behind Star Wars, so he understands Star Wars better than anyone, other than George Lucas, of course. But for the way, yeah, because he Dave Filoni worked on a couple other stories in the early 2000s, and then he ended up producing and writing most of Clone Wars with George Lucas. So you might as well say Dave Filoni is like George Lucas's protege, really. But and that's how come every story he's brought out has been just like gold. The Clone Wars, fantastic series. Star Wars Rebels, Star Wars Resistance. Um, right on point with the Mandalorian stories, Ahsoka and all that. Like, I'm glad she's getting her own series because that girl needs to have her own series. Like, yeah, and it's about time. And I kind of feel like now that the Skywalker story is finished, they can really focus on the rest of the lore. They're not stuck with tying in the Skywalkers to everything, and they can actually start talking about other people in the galaxy. So Yeah, they're talking about doing a series for it. That yeah, they need to make him not so like I don't know if you noticed, but like in the older like movies, he seems a little bit one dimensional. Like he seems like oh no, Darth Vader's my father, but it was like I kind of understand your pain, but I don't really care for you as much as I do the other characters. It's kind of like here's the discipline for joining the rebels. Plot development. That and the fact that eventually he goes to start his own Jedi Academy, then gets like betrayed by Kylo, and Kylo just murders everyone that he ever knew. It's just like, I, I, yeah. I think that's But you know what couldn't make it worse is we're actually at the hour mark, so we've kind of gone off track a bit. But anyway, this is the off track podcast. But you know what doesn't go to shit? That's the podcast. The podcast is not shit. It's pretty good. So we'd appreciate it if you give this a very big follow. We can follow us on all our platforms. We are currently available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and what was the other one? iHeartRadio as well. So yeah, give us a follow there for our weekly podcasts, where we talk about the latest in gaming news, occasional movie news by the looks, where we talk about the latest thing in pop culture. And yeah, we appreciate if you give it a follow. And be sure to tune in next week, because next week is a very special episode. For the new year, we are doing an extra long episode with a bunch of special guests where we were talking about the games of the decade. So, any games that have come out between 2010 and 2020, we'll be talking about the best, the worst, and the, I don't know, controversial or weirdest games of the decade. So, be sure to join us for that. I will be here, Mitch will be here. We got a couple other great guests as well. Pat will be appearing, hopefully, and a couple other people that we'll probably keep bit secret, so be sure to come back and listen to that episode. It'll be a little bit longer than usual because we've got a lot more people on the podcast, so it'll probably go longer. But yeah, we hope you enjoy that one. And yeah, if you haven't already, if you didn't know already, my name is Charlie. I've been here with Mitch. Yeah, and since this episode's out before Christmas, Merry Christmas to all our listeners. And we'll be back next week. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, we'll see you on the next level.